Okay, so I think we learned our lesson. If you're getting lowered into a large cavern into the earth and you get snagged on some toxic waste canister, don't tug. Oh, sorry, Tony. Hello, friends. Welcome back to the show. So glad to see you all once again. And if you're new here, thanks for stopping by. This is the show where we review episodes of shows and movies that we grew up on in the 80s and 90s. So if this sounds like something you might enjoy, hop below, hit the subscribe button. Maybe while you're down there, hit the like button too, because I think you're going to enjoy this series as we're working our way through each and every episode of Batman Beyond. And today we're talking about the episode Earth Mover, which originally aired on September 25th, 1999.
I wasn't listening.
Well, this episode has some neat elements to it and some great visual aspects to the episode, but isn't the Earth guy just a ripoff of Clayface? I don't know. We're going to talk all about that right after our 60-second Beyond Bomb breakdown of the episode. I'm going to give you a complete synopsis in 60 seconds or less, or that bomb's going to blow up. Don't worry. You'll get to see the bomb blow up. Terry and some girls are doing some studying. One of the girls sees outside somebody's following her, and Terry looks out and goes, "Oh, I think there is." And he goes and traces it down. Turns out this is just this dirt thing that he takes a sample back to the Batcave, and Batman goes, "Well, I don't know. It just seems like dirt." And he goes to school, and he's trying to protect them. And we find out that the girl's dad, supposedly she calls by the first name, and he goes, "Hey, kids, I want to show you something." He shows her the site of this new factory where his business is going to be moving into. He goes, "Oh, it's perfect. Oh, this is great." And then he starts getting suspicious of people following, and these things happen, and the cave's in, and he's at the house, and he's trying to tell his daughter Jackie what's happening, or his not real daughter Jackie, and she's going, "I have all these questions," and he sees somebody in the shadow. "Oh, I'm sorry," and it turns out to be Batman, and then the Earth just comes and envelops the whole thing, and they go down below, and we see this flashback also before all this that that Bill was setting up this factory, but he had to get rid of some toxic waste, so he goes to bury it, and when in the process of doing that, his partner gets buried into the toxic waste. Barry goes, "Well, I think this might be the issue." Well, and so when they're down there, they meet Tony, who's like infused with the dirt and the toxic waste, and he's attacking them, and they fight, and then finally they get away, and then he goes, "Oh, I want to save my daughter," and he moves the boulder out of the way, and everybody goes home happy, except for Tony.
He had to be dead.
Visually speaking, this episode is pretty cool. I mean, there's a lot of neat elements. And you think about going up against an opponent that's made of dirt that can sink into the ground and pop up here. And when you punch him, he just disintegrates. And dirt can be hard, dirt can be soft. Very formidable threat, but certainly has a lot of comparisons to be made with Clayface. And I'm trying my best not to compare it to the old show, but this feels like familiar ground that we've been on. Pun intended.
Plain old dirt.
This feels like a very familiar area that we've talked about before. And I know this is kind of a unique take on it, that it's not just one creature that can shape shift and turn into other things, but it's somebody infused with all of the earth, and Terry having to go up against literally the ground, and is kind of unique and kind of interesting in that sense, but at the same time is sort of familiar. But I think there's some elements to this episode that help it out, but then other areas that just didn't work for me.
Do you really think last night will be the end of it?
First of all, I do have to say, the way they get into this episode with Terry and his friends studying and them challenging him that how does he have the multiplication table memorized is kind of interesting, because certainly, I don't know how things are now, but at that time period, that was a big focus when I was going to school, to memorize the times tables.
You're saying you memorized the multiplication tables?
And I remember people having the argument that, well, we have calculators, why can't we just use a calculator? Now, so it's even worse, because we have not only calculators on our phones, but also we can just ask Siri or other forms of these virtual assistants to just solve these math problems. You can even Google it and it'll solve virtually any math problem. So I don't know if it's as much of a focus now, and certainly now they have new math. I don't even want to get into that, but it is sort of a funny nod there that, one, they predicted that pretty well, but also it's a funny joke that who would ever memorize those times tables? I don't know if I ever did. I think I know some of them. I certainly didn't have the whole table memorized like some did.
People used to.
I like the position that Bruce takes on this, that he is looking at the dirt sample and questioning Terry's validity of his story, that what happened because the sample is just dirt.
Interesting. That's all you can say?
But it's not that he doesn't believe Terry, and it's not that it's not surprising, but is waiting to see where this will develop and knowing that this creature will be back.
A word I rarely use.
I like the mystery that surrounds this episode, and as we work our way through the story, trying to figure out what is going on, who's responsible, the little tease about Jackie calling her dad Bill is enough to get people's attention to go, why aren't you calling him dad? Oh, it's complicated. And I like where that's going. I love how they're rolling out this story and developing this mystery as we go. It does get a little confusing in there, especially once they start developing this backstory of what happened and the fallout between Bill and Tony.
I couldn't afford to dispose of my excess chemicals the way I was supposed to.
They spent a lot of time on this origin story, but it didn't quite make sense, and some of the science in it was a little shaky, but I'll go along for the ride. But really, it ends up being where Tony becomes this creature because Bill's an idiot.
The shaft's totally sealed. No way for a bleed through.
He's sending him down into this cavern, and it gets stuck on this canister, and he just wants him to tug on it.
It's snagged.
Give it a tug.
That's just stupidity, and it was interesting to me that it was like they spent a lot of time doing this flashback of how Tony was created into this monster or whatever, but it was just negligence and not a well-crafted origin story. But they spent a lot of time on it. Balance seemed off.
You were too young, and besides, it wouldn't have brought him back.
I know I don't say this often, but it almost felt like the mystery of this wasn't working for me, and the backstory and the origin of this, the storyline of it wasn't working. But then once we actually get into the cavern and facing off against the enemy,
Don't make me repeat myself.
is where this episode really kind of took on a new life, and I enjoyed a lot of those sequences. I know that's counterintuitive to what I normally say, that I want to see more story and less action. That was really heightened, and certainly having Jackie there interacting with her real father and having some sort of connection to him and him feeling for her kind of helped all that.
And this is what the accident did to you?
Not accident.
But we got to see the bat sub, which is a neat element, and that was a cool visual aspect and a great way of introducing that. And we get to see Terry fighting against a foe that would be very challenging, literally fighting against the dirt, fighting against the earth, and it moving on him and shifting and capturing is a great threat. And I think that is some of the highlights of the episode. But at the end of it all, what actually did Tony end? Was it just that there was extra ooze or toxic waste or whatever that overcame him and everything started shaking up and they got out of there? I was just a little confused about that. What was actually how they actually stopped him? Because it seemed like he had the upper hand, dirt, through most of the fight, and then it sort of he just got defeated. But I do like the very last tag where he moves the boulder out of the way for them to get out. Is a nice touch.
Jackie.
So when it comes time to rank this episode, it sort of missed the mark for me. There was a lot of potential in the episode. Although it was very similar to Clayface, I thought they utilized a different approach to it and created this villain that was very unique. And again, not a villain just doing bad things, but a justified creature trying to take back what was rightfully his or trying to, getting a little revenge on his former partner for making him the way that he was. But other than some of the action visual elements, it sort of fell short. The mystery just wasn't as developed as I wanted it to be. So for those reasons, falls at the number 9 spot, just below Meltdown, which, again, another tragic villain, but I thought Meltdown was just better executed than this one. But I do have it beating out Touch of Karari, which actually was a tough decision on where those ones balance. That one being very action-driven and just a character that was justified to, hey, I have a mark, I'm going after them, and this one having more of a backstory in there, but they just kind of flip-flopped, and maybe they could be interchangeable, but I had to make a decision, and this one was just slightly better than that one, just on the visual elements.
I didn't know. I didn't know.
So do you agree with me that this one just was sort of missing the mark? Or are there just things in this episode that I'm not picking up on that I should be? Let me know in the comment section below. If you enjoyed this episode, please click the like button. If you want to see more episodes like this, hit that subscribe button. I have new episodes coming out every week. And next up, I have the episode Joyride, so you don't want to miss that. As always, I'm Andy Canone. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you soon.